When it comes to you just making this quick switch and putting money from one account into another because it's supposed to save you a ton of money on financial aid, I would definitely say get a second opinion, maybe even a third opinion. Have someone run numbers for you. You do the numbers yourself. See what the tax consequences are before you actually rush in and make these rash decisions. I'm Trevor Mizrahi, College Financial Aid Advisor, and I'm here to help you with figuring out what to do with your 529 college savings plan. So one of the things that I've noticed as a college advisor is that the college savings plans that you've put aside since your kid was young, these are a good thing. Now, when it comes to financial aid, it can obstruct your chances of getting the most financial aid, but it also depends on how much your income is. So before you even start worrying about, should I save in a 529 college savings plan? I've heard that a lot of colleges penalize me from accessing the financial aid to its fullest if I have money saved in these types of accounts. Understand that in a lot of ways, if your income is over the limit to qualify for need-based financial aid, it's not a bad thing to have money saved in that area. Now, when it comes to need-based financial aid, let's say you do have quite a bit of money saved in one of these plans, and your income is low enough where you could qualify for grants, some need-based help at a state school or even a private school. Yeah, potentially the 529 could come in and maybe reduce the amount of financial aid that you would otherwise be eligible for a little bit. But it doesn't mean that you need to go and jump the gun and start selling these accounts. So you set this up for a purpose, and colleges actually have the expected family contribution, which is what they expect you to pay based on you saving a little bit of money. And even if you didn't save, they're going to expect you to borrow money anyway. So if you've had the time or the ability to actually put money into these accounts, it's okay. It's actually a good thing. Now, there are some strategies in terms of what that means, you actually using that money and how that impacts you. And what I mean by strategies is sometimes people will encourage a family to say, hey, sell that 529 and actually put it somewhere else. I'm not a big advocate of that. I know that I've heard plenty of families who've contacted me and said, hey, I've heard this. What do you think, Trevor? Just know that in some cases that it could actually hurt your chances of getting more financial aid. Because if you do sell it and you don't use the money for a educational expense like tuition, room and board, things like that, and they have expanded what you can use 529 savings plans for, you might end up paying capital gains and you could actually get taxed on the earnings. So what that would end up doing in subsequent years when you reapply for financial aid is it actually goes against you, and income is the thing that matters the most. So if you're liquidating this account and all of a sudden you have this capital gain, plus on top of that, you're paying a 10% penalty on those gains, was that really the best thing that you should have done? Maybe not. So it's funny because when I talk about the assets in a college plan, and I'm actually going through the full workshop and I get to this part, automatically hands go up. Well, Trevor, are there alternatives? I mean, general rule of thumb, keep money saved in the parent's name versus having money saved in the child's name. So if you've heard of things like UTMAs or UGMAs, these are all child savings accounts. Those actually penalize you more when it comes to receiving need-based financial aid if it's in the child's name. A 529, even though it's for the benefit of the student, it's actually saved in the parent's name. So that's a good thing. Now, there are schools like USC, for example, they have supplemental forms that pertain to their own institution, so institutional forms. One of the questions, if I remember correctly, it's question Q on one of their institutional forms, actually asks, do you have money saved in a 529 college savings plan? And if so, what amount? So yeah, some colleges actually do emphasize this account, and they actually plan on you spending down that money before they give you institutional funds. So there is that element to it, and yes, I do agree that in some ways this could reduce your amount of financial aid. However, on the opposite side of that, and this is something that I've noticed just from my side of the desk, working with plenty of families, looking at the admission side as well, colleges will actually make their decisions in a lot of times based on how much money does the family have saved. If this is a family that needs full support or a lot of financial aid, could we maybe get another student in the door that doesn't need as much? Maybe they've had a little bit of savings. Maybe their income dictates how much financial aid they're going to get. But let's say if you don't have any savings and you liquidate that account, believe it or not, that could actually hurt your chances of getting admitted to that college. And so those are colleges that are called need aware, need sensitive schools. If you ever hear the term need blind, kind of like the Ivy League schools and some elite private selective schools, they go based on the guidelines of need blind, where they don't look at any of your financial criteria in order to admit your student. However, if they are going to look at your ability to qualify for need-based financial aid, that does come into play. So yes, there's kind of this stratum of who pays and who doesn't. So college enrollment advisors, they actually know, and they have this down precisely, down to the zip code of how much it would take to get people within your zip code to actually be willing to come and pay their fee. And what kind of discounts do you normally get from this general geographic area based on your zip code? So they tend to find that if they give people in your general area a certain amount of discount, they know that that's usually the threshold that makes them comfortable enough to be able to come to their school and afford it and borrow what they may need to borrow if they don't have the savings. So if you're going into this thinking, oh my gosh, I have a 529 savings plan, I'm lost and I just don't know how to approach this correctly, do not make any rush decisions. It's okay that you have these accounts. And by the way, no, you can't just pass these benefits along to your younger siblings or the younger children and then get away with not having to disclose that on financial aid. It's still part of your portfolio. Colleges will still ask for your net worth, and part of that net worth is a 529 college savings plan. Do the net price calculators. Find out if you do qualify. You can type in any school on Google and follow it up with net price calculator, NPC, and just see what the ballpark figure is that the school would expect you to pay. If you wanted to go on FAFSA Forecaster and just put in some basic information with your income, just get a sense of what the federal government assumes that your family contribution would be, how much they would expect you to pay on an annual basis. That would be your starting point to just see really, is it worth it for me to move these numbers around? Should I actually go through the extent of liquidating this account where I might actually pay some tax penalties and count it as income on this year's taxes, which I'm going to have to submit to the school the next year? I know that a lot of this stuff looks pretty on the outside when you first begin, because your financial advisor puts this package together and says, look, over the long term, if you save X amount of dollars and you earn this amount, by the time your student reaches college age, you're going to have this amount of money saved, and it's going to be that much easier to afford college. Maybe the case. And I'm not bashing financial advisors who do this either. One of the things that I like, and I would suggest to families if they have the ability to, is maybe look at a Roth IRA, where a Roth IRA, if you put money into that, you actually don't have to disclose that on a FAFSA form, because that money gets saved in a retirement type of account, and any type of retirement account actually does not get counted in the family contribution algorithm that they put together. So that could be maybe one way to look at it. By the way, if the grandparents set up the 529 plan, not the parent, but the grandparent for the benefit of the student, that's not part of you as a parent. That's not part of your net worth calculation. So on the FAFSA, you actually could bypass listing that as an asset within your portfolio. So there are various ways that you can actually manage this without getting too caught up in the conversation of, oh my gosh, I have this college plan and now I'm kind of dead in the water and I've been told by this financial person to maybe liquidate it. Like I said, sometimes it impacts your child's ability to get admitted to a school based on having no savings. And I know that sounds pretty harsh, but colleges are a business and you need to treat it that way. So the general rule of thumb is a third of what you're going to end up paying for college is through the savings that you've accumulated up until your child reaches college age. A portion of that, maybe a third of it, comes from your cash flow or the income while your student's in college. And then the other third, for the most part, could maybe come from borrowing some from the federal loans, like the Parent Plus loan program. And by the way, have your student take out some loans if needed too. It's a very low interest rate. Some of you might even qualify for an interest-free Stafford loan where you don't have to pay the interest, it gets paid for you. And then you have about 10 years to pay off these loans after they graduate. So when they're starting to produce an income, you're on a standardized payment plan with the federal government, you make 10 years of on-time payments, whatever is left over as a balance, in most cases, actually gets wiped clean. So that's kind of a strategy to look at. The reason I put this video together, when I first started in this industry back in 2008, doing college advising, the conversations that I would have over and over with parents is, oh my gosh, I had all this money saved in these college savings plan, and then the market crashed, and now their savings went down to like 25% of what it was at one time. I like to see now that I'm having conversations with clients that, all this money that I've saved has actually grown to a pretty significant amount. I can use this now. So my suggestion would be, if you do have these plans, maybe make it age-based, where by the time they get closer to college age, the investment itself becomes a little bit more conservative in the way that it's invested, so that if there was a market correction, you're not going to see this drastic drop in the balance that you've accumulated. I'm Trevor Mizrahi, college coach, and I really hope that this was an impactful video for you, and it helps you really kind of think of ways to manage your college financing, how to save for college, and really how to approach this the right way. Be proactive. Take advantage of some of those online calculators. If you ever want to reach out to me, I can do some financial figures for you. I could run some numbers to see what your family contribution looks like, how that gets plugged into different schools, the amount of gift aid that they can offer you, how much scholarship money you might qualify for. But kind of put this into practice. Don't just wait till the last minute, because I know a lot of families that I talk to, the parents that I talk to a lot, and I ask, how do you plan on paying for college? The main thing that I hear from them is, well, we'll figure it out later. I just want to get my child into college. It's like the last conversation that they ever want to have. And it's a hard reality to face, that you want your child to have this upward mobility in society. Maybe some of you are feeling guilty because you haven't been able to save enough. And colleges recognize that reality too. So there's a lot of emotions that happen in this process. Families make decisions on applying to colleges that their students want to go to, that they've heard of from friends. Maybe they're large campuses. They see them playing football on Saturday mornings, and they just want to have that school spirit with the rah-rah. And if you go out of state to a public school, you're going to pay a premium for that tuition. So my whole goal is to get you to not make rash decisions. Don't make these emotional decisions just because you're feeling guilty and you're like, well, this is the only legacy that I can leave my child, is by borrowing money, because I don't have a whole big nest egg that I've set aside that I can give them if I were to pass away. And so a lot of parents have the mindset of, oh, I might as well just borrow money and allow them to have the education that they want. Yes, it's altruistic in your thinking, and I agree with that way of thinking up to a certain extent. You shouldn't go into this borrowing until your death, and then you're going to have to work all sorts of years beyond what you plan to retire just to kind of pay off these debts, or you're going to have to alter your lifestyle significantly. This is an undergraduate education. You should not be paying full price if you don't have to. By the way, studies show that students that are capable enough with their grades to get into really high selective schools, but let's say they chose to go elsewhere because it was just a better financial fit, studies show, and Princeton economists have actually looked at this over decades, that student has the same earning potential 10 years after graduation, once they get into their career, to earn just as much as those students that came out of those name schools like the Ivy League schools. So this whole purpose of this video is to really kind of educate you on what is the world of financial aid when it comes to college savings plans like the 529. I'm Trevor Mizrahi, college coach, and I want you to be able to make the right decisions for you as a family and for your student. Thanks for watching.